Hello everyone, it's UnkleBTD here with you. Apologize for the lateness of the video. It's been an active into the month for February, but we're here now in March, and this is March 2nd, and so we're going to go ahead and get the reading done for the month of March, which also includes our equinox. So we're going to be moving out of winter into spring, which is also the start of the seasonal new year. So we've had the New Year, calendar New Year, we've had the Chinese New Year, now we're coming up on the seasonal New Year. And we're going to see what this seasonal New Year has for us, and that kind of issues in through March. So let's see what the ancestors and the bones have to say. Alrighty, so we've got the bones thrown, and we have our dice at number 12, which is a familiar number. Which is and it's also the 12th house of the zodiac, which is Pisces, which is also for this month. And we also have this Adinkra card, which is the Cowries. Now, the Adinkra card talks about the affluency, the wealth, and the sacredness when used by a priestess or priest or priestess. So how does that also coincide with what we've got with the 12th die in the 12th house? Well, the 12th house is about endings, healing, closure, and spirituality. So imagine, if you will, the affluency and the wealth and the sacredness that comes with endings, and especially when something that is being sacredly recognized as an ending. Imagine what it means when healing is done from the place of the aid of sacredness. As well as, again, much like endings, we also have closures, the same thing. And again, that connection with the sacred, the spiritual side of it. I mean, if you consider, if you will, that most of the time, those who want to have a church wedding are doing this in a religious sense, as opposed to, say, a courthouse wedding, which is much more of a legal sense and civil sense. And yet, when we have divorces, we never have an aspect of, or in some cultures there are that aspect, but there are those also plans of that we never also would do a sacred witnessing of the ending and closure of a relationship that happens in the world right now. No, it's like everyone has to stay together, but no, sometimes relationships and things do need to end. So what does it mean for us to have a sacred recognition of a closure of a relationship, of a ending of a relationship, so that both parties can then move on with a sense of wealth and a sense that they're still being people, they're still being sacred, because as they move on into the world and potentially find new love, potentially find new work, potentially find more of the path that they're on, because this was in some cases only a moment. It also has the standpoint of how can we also have that sacredness in a type of situation there with healing. Whether it is the ending of a relationship of some sort, be it, again, romantic, friendship, business, there's also the sense of how do we recognize the healing that needs to take place on a spiritual and sacred level when somebody is recovering. We have many people who are still recovering from dealing with COVID. We have many people that are still worried about COVID. And how do we recognize the sacredness and the wealth that comes with that aspect of both that fear, but also that aspect of taking responsibility? And at the heart of it, what is our connection with the spirit of the world, of the realm we live in? What is our connection to the spirit of those that we cohabitate with, that we call husband, wife, partner, spouse, child, mother, father, or even simply friend and neighbor? So this is where we're focusing on as we look at the theme for this month. And again, like last month in February, we've got the shell, which is turned inward. So again, this is much more about your inner work and the inner work that's going on within yourself, and I'm going to say also within your immediate area. So it's not about necessarily everything that's going on in the world. It's going to be what's going on within yourself and within your immediate vicinities. So that can be your home, that could be your office. But again, it's going to relate to what's going on internally. How are we dealing with our ego? How are we dealing with our fear? How are we dealing with our sense of love? And can we operate from those places so that they provide endings and closures, healing and spirituality, as well as the affluence and the wealth and the sacredness? How can we all act as if we are priests and priestesses in the actions that we're doing as we do all of our day-to-day aspects, and especially when it comes to closures and endings, and especially when it comes to healing, and when it comes to just being in connection with the divine? So it's going to be an internal. Now we go over to our main big bones here. We have 3 of them. So this one's work, this one is family. This one over here, this one's home. Now, I will say also what this gives me is sort of an image of is kind of like there's a doorway here. So if you were looking at an architectural drawing, so here's one wall, here's another wall, here's another wall, and here's where the doorway that would be allowing ingress or access, or even a passageway between rooms. But I see this more as being a building. And there's a building here, and these are all the things that you might be putting inside of it. But you notice, again, they spill out further out here into this connection place. And we have a large grouping of a lot of our support bones from the tailbones, as well as the spinal bones here. And we also have our spinal bone, top of the collar of the spinal bone here, which shows that there's a lot of energy here in the support. And it's, again, over here next to the work bone. And as I've said many times, our work bone is not just what we do to pay the bills in the day. It is the purpose for which we are here. It is the experience of living and what we are bringing into the world through our efforts. So what does it mean for us to act like we are priests and priestesses, working to bring about affluency to everyone, to bring about wealth and sacredness to those around us, and not just to ourselves as well? How does it mean for our work to be, in this case, in this time, to be about helping there be endings and closures that are sacredly balanced? How is there aspects for us to be working as priests and priestesses that are focusing on healing and ensuring that we're all connecting with the divine energy in whatever form it takes? That's some of the work for this month. How are you acting as if you were a priest and priestess in the world? A priest and priestess of life, of joy, of existence, and yes, death as well. Because that's also a component of endings and closures. So when we get to the family bone here, which is crossing at the end of here, there's an aspect of where family is going to be part of this. But equally too, we've got another one of the spinal bones, and we have the one of the rib bones here, which is again providing inspiration. So there's inspiration and connection with our family. And again, what are we encouraging? Are we encouraging the building of relationships with the newborns that have come into the family? Are we encouraging and recognizing the end of a child no longer being a child and being a teenager? Are we working and recognizing in our own families those individuals who have now left childhood and are in young adult, or even going from young adult into adulthood? All of that's going to be part of, again, the aspect of what is the sacred right and sacred recognition we're doing for that. So over here was the solitary home bone. And home is going to be okay. It's going to be static. It's going to be not the place where we've got a lot of focus, but it is part of our structure. And always remember, how are we recognizing our homes as a place of sacredness? How are we making sure our homes are a place where spirit and positive spirits want to dwell? Some would say if there's positive spirits who want to dwell here, they need to pay rent. Well, guess what? They're paying rent by ensuring that you have a positive space. They are paying rent by ensuring that positivity is coming to your home. So how are you doing that? How are you opening the windows and airing out the place? How are you doing your spring cleaning, which is something that will come up in this month, since we are coming up on the seasonal new year? How are we creating that space to be clear and to be sacred for spirit in our homes. And that may be something that we don't have to do a lot. And again, we don't have to do a major, just literally tear the house and almost tear the house apart and do that. It is just that simple act of doing that basic cleaning and just being in touch with that. So up here, we have the quartz piece, which is, as always, something to talk about memory and such. And there, too, is the standpoint, how are we being sacred with memories? How are we showing the wealth that our memories have? Are we just dwelling purely on something that's negative, but are we looking at the full spectrum of our lives, of all the things that are both good and bad? Are we being aware, and this is something that's just been popping across my mind in this last day or so, is are we looking at our memories or in the moments that we have and we're feeling insecure and asking ourselves, why is our ego feeling insecure in this particular moment? And that is us ministering like priest and priestess to the parts of ourselves, to the parts of our memory that is coming up in this month and in this period of closures and endings, this period of healing and of spirituality, these periods of finding affluency and wealth and sacredness. There's an element of us being our own priest and priestesses to our memories and, most importantly, to our egos. And we've got one of the spinal bones here, which is just, again, putting that standpoint of this is a structural thing. This is a structural thing where we can add into our lives and add into going forward and growing. Now down here we have the copper piece, which is actually at the edge of the reading surface, which normally we don't, but since it's partially on and partially off, it's still being recognized. And it's this fact that spirit is here, but spirit is also withdrawn a bit because it's now preparing for this seasonal shift and the energy that it's going to bring in. Now we want it to bring in a massive amount of positive healing energy. And again, that's setting things up to be in that sense of sacred. Are we setting up a good conduit for sacred energy to come in, for spiritual energy? But it is massing, because you notice that the bulk of the piece is off the reading surface. This is the place they're pooling their energy. And we want it to come in, and we want it to come in to help us all. We do not want it to come in so fast and so rushed that it causes damage, which is also possible. Because spirit is watching, how are we acting? Are we being good priestesses and priestesses, not just to ourselves, but to each other, to the world itself? Because there's a lot of support and balance around that. So this is what we've got for this month of March. I hope you are all well, and I hope you all can approach this sense of what does it mean to be a priest and priestess. And I will also add, we're not talking in the classic religious sense of a priest and priestess. No one's going to suddenly get themselves a frock or a habit, or themselves a certain collar, or have to wear fancy clothes and vestments. It is the aspect of ministering to the world, to our family and friends, to ourselves and our own psyche, in that sense of compassion and understanding and kindness, but most of all, that sense of spirit. So on behalf of everyone, and the Orishas and Loas and the gods and all that there is, Ashe, and be well.